Hello, hello, hello. Um, so this is something I've been wanting to do for quite some time, and I'm happy that I'm in a position to finally do it. So I'm just going to share this with on my actual Facebook, so we get things rocking and rolling, popping and locking, moving and grooving, and all that. So, all right, here we go, y'all. Lessons they never teach you is the very, very, very first one. So I kind of did it before one of my friends, and it was kind of like, it was just kind of like a conversation that we had. But I've been really wanting to do this for 2 years, so now it's time for me to really lock and load and get it done. Okay. So I'm sharing the live to my personal. Okay. So I'm sharing the live. Okay. So I'm sharing the live. Okay. So I'm sharing the live. Okay. Okay. Okay, y'all. Okay, so, all right, so what's up, everybody? This is Lessons They Never Teach You, and basically, what it's about. This is my intro to, just talking about relationships and sharing some of the more intimate things that I've been wanting to talk about for quite some time. So I don't care. Nobody watching. I don't care. I don't care because people know how I rock and I roll. So, lessons they never teach you. What it's about is basically me as a black man really being in a space to share my experiences and the experiences of others and really talk about the dynamics of, relationships between men and women. So, my me coming up as a black man and really truly understanding the nature of relationships, how things go, and how we were in a space to really heal or understand trauma or understand our mental health or really understand why we have so many emotional issues as black men. So I was raised coming up. I spent a lot of time with my mom. I spent a lot of time with my mom and my aunts and all my girl cousins. So because of that, I was in a space where I was a little bit more emotionally in tune with women as opposed to men. It took me a little bit of time to really find my masculinity and really to understand what that was all about and really to be in a position where I could explain the way I felt or the way I was acting a certain type of way or the way I was being a certain type of way, and really just coming to grips and really just understanding that. So lessons they never teach you is just my perspective on the intimate dynamics between men and women. And, I just wanted to explore that a little more while I'm doing this show. I'm going to have, this is just my first one, it's Facebook Live. We're quarantined. I hope all you guys are staying safe, and I hope all you guys are, healthier and whatnot, and you guys are doing what you need to do in order to stay safe. Make sure you wash your hands and all that. But since we're in a space where we're quarantined, I wanted to really take the time to put some thought into lessons they never teach you. This is 2 years in the making, y'all. This is 2 years in the making. I've been wanting to do this for quite some time. So a lot of people really know me about, for marketing or chemistry or what have events and the Win Factor, Influencers Lab, blah, 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 blah. But this is just something that I've been wanting to talk about for quite some time. And now I'm just in the space to really, really talk about it. So tonight, I really just wanted to talk about, some of the most difficult things that people need to work through. And like I said, this is my first one, y'all. So, bear with me. I'm really good on video, but this is something that's brand new for me. So this is really something that I just wanted to talk about. So lessons they never teach you. Here we go, y'all. Make sure y'all follow me everywhere. Malcolm Locks everywhere. MALCOLMLOCS everywhere. So tonight, I really want to talk about some of the most difficult things that people needed to work through in their relationship when you're going through a difficult time. So, it could possibly be like, finances, or, maybe somebody cheated on somebody, or maybe you just didn't understand what that other person was going through at a particular time and place in their life, right? So I really want to kind of just get a small deep dive into some of the comments that people had on a particular Facebook status that I had, and I really wanted to just talk about it a little bit more thoroughly. So I made the post on April 8th on my Facebook, and it was, what's the most difficult thing you had to work through in a relationship that you had or one that you're in, right? So I want to go through I'm going to go all the way from the top all the way to the bottom. So the very first comment was from Allison Nicole, and she spoke about codependency. So as soon as I seen her comment about codependency, that instantly raised a red flag in my mind, because when you talk about codependency, it's almost like where one person can't thrive without the other person, and one person can't do or go about their life without the other person. So codependency can be a really, really, really toxic trait if you don't address it early on. And actually, codependency can really be a deeper issue when you're talking about, black men, or at least this is my perspective, y'all. So when we talk about codependency, immediately in my mind, I'm just thinking about how maybe a person was raised with a certain parent, and because of that, they relied on that parent so much, they started to really show that person that type of love that they would show for a parent. So that's kind of what goes in my mind when we talk about codependency. So moving forward, I told her to elaborate. So in the comments, you guys can go right back to my Facebook. I made this post on April the 8th, and she's talking about, she was talking about when codependency, taking on her partner's problems. She was talking about, codependency and taking on her partner's problems and taking on her partner's her partner's burdens and whatnot. She also said, me being the enabler to one's addictive behavior, mental behavior, or responsibilities. She also said, basically forgetting all about myself, who I am, to save someone that needed to save themselves. Super, super deep. I'm going to read it again. Shout out to Allison Nicole for this dope comment. She said, taking on my partner's problems, me being the enabler to one's addictive behavior, mental behavior, and responsibilities, basically forgetting all about myself, who I am, in order to save the someone that needed to save self. So it's a lot of unpacking in this one in particular, right? So first of all, codependency, when she was talking about taking on somebody else's problems, a lot of times in relationships, I always hear when people are on the latter part of a relationship, they always talk about, man, I forgot who I was. I forgot the person who I was. I forgot my sense of self while being in a relationship. And I think that's one of the foundational root causes of codependency, is literally forgetting who you are, because you put so much effort into that person and into that relationship. I see a lot of memes all the time where I see people say that, hey, when you're talking about prioritizing a person in your life, the person who you're in a relationship with should be number two, right? Because when you're talking about prioritizing your life, you need to prioritize your life, right? So when you're in a relationship, I personally feel that you are always a priority, period. You are always a priority, period. So you always need to be in a space where you're always talking about your dreams, your ambitions, your wants, and your needs. And personally, I think that that should align with the other person, right? So what is this other person's dreams? What is their wants? What is their ambitions? Because when you talk about a relationship, you guys are coming together in a relationship, and it's really, 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 really hard to bring two people together in a relationship. Like, people think that it's easy when you're literally trying to take two different families or two different people that are trying to coexist with one another. That's extremely difficult when you think about it. There's a lot of people who have done it successfully, but not without work. So when we're talking about codependency and taking on somebody else's problems, you can literally shoulder the burden of somebody else's problems. And that's not even just a whole, prioritizing issue, right? We also talking about finances, right? Because when people get married, they also take on that person's finances. So they take on that person's debt, or they take on that person's whatever when it comes to finances. So that could be that's a sign of codependency as well. Some people, there are instances where some people go up in their finances when they start to deal with somebody else, and there's other instances where people can go downhill when we're talking about finances in a relationship. So I think that, these things need to be, also think that all these things need to be discussed prior to a relationship. Shout out to everybody who's watching right now. Thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate y'all. Shout out to Jamar, Crystal, Carla, Deanna, Olivia. Appreciate all y'all for tuning in. I'm pretty sure it was other people who tuned in as well. Appreciate all y'all. Thank you very much. And Jamar, I know my boy Jamar is married, so he probably could chime in on some of the stuff that I'm talking about right now. But I think that when you're about to go into a long-term committed relationship and you're really serious about somebody and trying to pull back from some of that codependency, I really think that you need to have a conversation with that other person. Those hard conversations that people really don't want to talk about. And finances is definitely a conversation that people don't talk about when entering in a long-term committed relationship or a marriage or whatnot. I've never been married, so I can't go that far. I'm going to talk about everything before marriage. But even still, when you want to be in a committed relationship, finances is a big deal. Finances can make or break a relationship, period. And I don't care if you married, situationship, whatever, finances can make or break a relationship. So I think that's a part of the conversation that you need to have prior to going into any relationship to reduce that codependency, right? Because you don't want to just bear the brunt of somebody's financial burdens, right? If you're bearing the brunt of somebody's financial burdens, that could put you in a place to have a lot of animosity towards that other person, because it's like, yo, I'm hustling, I'm working real hard, I'm doing this, that, and the third, and it's like you're not pulling your own weight or carrying, shout out to the brand, you're not carrying your own weight, right? So that could really lead to a lot of animosity in a relationship, and inevitably it could possibly fail because you guys didn't have those conversations prior to being in that relationship. So also, she talked about being an enabler of someone else's addictive behavior. So I'm not even going to take it in terms of like an actual relationship, but we could talk about like family, right? When you enable somebody's toxic behavior, that can be a super problem for a long time, especially if you don't address it. Shout out, what's up, Ray? What's going on? Oh man, I got some good people who can talk about some of this stuff. Being an enabler, has anybody been in a position who's watching right now, been in a position that they enabled somebody to continuously do that toxic behavior that brought the relationship down? If you have, please go in the comments, let me know, because I want to hear what you guys got to say and whatnot. Matter of fact, can I pull up the comments? Or maybe I could just write a comment. If y'all got comments, please put them in the comments. But I remember a time where I was an enabler. Like, I enabled another person to rely on me for a certain thing, and it brought a lot of toxicity into my own personal life. Now, sometimes people, I think what happens is that people when they talk about enabling, right? They only talk about enabling in a negative sense, right? But you could also enable somebody in a positive sense, right? So let's just say, for instance, when being in a relationship, if I am putting that pressure on somebody, whereas like it's going to inevitably make them better and they're listening, they're receiving, and they're taking in the things that I'm saying that's making them better. Okay, so I can make them, and I can be an enabler in terms of a positive light, right? But majority of times when we talk about being enabled, we talk about negative. We talk about, wait, this is my show. I can cuss. We talk about negative shit. So we talk about enabling, toxic behaviors. Actually, that could be a whole topic for a whole nother show. Enabling toxic behaviors, because I think there's a lot of people out here who have been in the space to enable toxic behaviors, and that actually led to their breakup over time. Because as I said, when you enable toxic behaviors, this is my perspective, right? And I could be wrong, or you guys can, give me some type of feedback, whereas you might not agree, right? But I think when you enable toxic behaviors, you put yourself in a position where you don't progress forward, right? As a person, I think when you enable toxic behaviors, you actually pull yourself back, or you take 2 steps back, 3 steps back, 4 steps back, because you're not in a position to help that person progress, because they probably been doing this since they was young, like 5, 6, 7. I think it's so important to really understand how a person was raised, how a person was brought up, how a person how a person seen love as they were coming up, and also how a person receives love, how a person gives love and whatnot, because that could really put you in a position where you really need to understand, hey, am I the one that needs to be giving you this love this type of way? Are you receiving this love a certain type of way? And and enabling, that's I think that's going to be another topic. Being in a position to enable somebody with a toxic personality, right? So also she said, drop something. So also she said, in this particular status, she was talking about responsibilities, right? So when she's talking about mental behavior or responsibilities, and that, I think, to me, that goes back to talking about understanding how somebody was raised, right? So not only when will you be in a position to understand how somebody loves, receives loves, gives love, or whatever, right? You also know where somebody head at, right? Shout out to my boy Steve. Shout out to my boy CJ. What up? You also, when we're talking about people's behavior, right? So if you don't really take the time to understand or get to know somebody, then how can you really understand to what's their triggers, right? So I was having a conversation with one of my homeboys before, and we were talking about his relationship in particular, and I felt as though, and this was me being non-biased because I was cool with both of them. So that I was, sat down, had a powwow with the guy and the girl. And as we started to really get down to the foundational issues of their relationship, we had come to a point where they didn't know one another, right? They enabled each other's toxic behavior because they didn't know one another. And I say that to say, the guy didn't know the girl and what triggered her what triggered her emotions, what triggered her to do certain things, and what triggered her to say and act out in a certain way, and vice versa. She didn't know what triggered him to act and be a certain type of way, and inevitably that relationship ended, right? Because they didn't know each other's triggers. Why? Because they didn't take the time to really understand how somebody was raised, or how they put themselves in the position to, they didn't really put themselves in the position to really know one another, right? So what happens is that there were certain things that she said or that she did that triggered him and made him shut down completely, to the point where he didn't even want to communicate with the other party. And we all know communication is a vital part of relationships. Once again, communication is a vital part of relationships. Oh, shout out to everybody who's watching right now. Please, if you have any questions, comments, whatever, this is my perspective on relationships and what I think about the intimate dynamics in relationships between men and women. So anyway, they didn't really take the time to get to know one another, and because they didn't know what triggered one another, they enabled one another's toxic behaviors. Or I don't even want to say toxic behaviors. They didn't know that, hey, this can inevitably end our relationship, which it did, because they didn't know how to communicate through those triggers that they triggered with each other all the time. And it was crazy how it used to go on. So there was another comment on this status. So if you, like I said, if you guys wanted to go to the status and comment, I think Hawa commented on the status as well. Was a couple of y'all who are on this live right now that commented on the status. Allison, she also talked about, she said, I still deal with at times because that's what I saw the women in my family before me do. So another reason as to why you really need to get to know somebody and understand their family dynamic from before, because people, when you're in a certain environment or you have been brought up a certain type of way, you've seen things a certain type of way. So in your mind, it's as if it's right, or because you didn't see outside of it, that's all that you know. So that could be the way that you view love, right? So she said, I still deal with it at times because that's what I saw in the women in the family before me do. And she was talking about codependency, right? But when I catch myself, I always take a step back and reflect on my reasoning and stop. And also, she went to go see a therapist. So I think it's very important for us as people of color, black people, black men, black women, it's very important to go seek help. I can't even begin to tell you guys how important it is for us to go make sure that our mental is correct, right? Because there's so much trauma that we have been in the space to receive, and there's so much trauma that we have received throughout our lives that we don't even know that we're carrying that baggage or that we're carrying those burdens along with us through life. And what happens is that as we are carrying those burdens and that baggage along with us through life, we tend to take that baggage and throw it on the other person, not even knowing that we're doing it, right? So me, for instance, I can remember times when I was in a relationship, I was engaged at one point, and I can remember times not truly understanding what it meant to be a leader in a relationship, right? Because it wasn't something that my eyes had seen directly, right? I didn't see what it took for a man to really nurture a woman, because that's just something that I did not see. And because it was something that I did not see, it caused me issues as I started to go through my relationship. So because I didn't see how to communicate, because I didn't see how to give love, because I didn't see how to really be a provider in a relationship, I didn't see that. And because I didn't see that, it led to me being, and it's not nobody's fault, you know what I mean? People just know what they know, right? It's nobody's fault. But because I didn't see that, it led to me not communicating the right way. It led to me not being in a space to receive her mentally and emotionally. It also led to me just not truly understanding where I need to be in order to, be a leader in this relationship. I mean, I've learned a lot since then. But it took me those lessons that they never teach you in order to get to the space that I'm in right now. And now, granted, I'm far from perfect. I'm super, super far from perfect. And I know nobody is. But there were just small, subtle things. Like, for instance, I remember I used to say shit that, like, oh man, that was the wrong timing for me to say something like that. And also, not only was it the wrong timing for me to say something like that, it was also something that I shouldn't have said anyway. And I said it, and it was the wrong timing. So it was just little small things that I learned being in that relationship, whereas I took that and, I had a lot of mental loads. Also, I didn't know how to receive my significant other. I didn't know how to handle her mental health issues, right? Because what happens is that because I didn't really understand how to handle my own mental and emotional issues, how the heck can I understand somebody else's mental and emotional issues, right? And because I didn't know how to handle that, that also inevitably led to the end of the relationship because, like I said, the miscommunication was just through the roof. Miscommunication was through the roof. And also, I know that I put her in a space where I made her, I probably enhanced like possibly her depression or her anxiety because I didn't know how to handle it. Like that's why this is called Lessons They Never Teach You, because I just did not know how to handle. This is my own personal therapy session. This is what helps me to heal. Not that I'm bad or anything. This is what helps me to heal. But I just did not know how to handle what it is that she brought into the relationship. Not in a bad way, not in a bad sense in the least bit, but I didn't know how to handle that. And because that's not something that I saw growing up, I didn't see, when, as a black man, it's like, oh, be strong, handle this. You're like, oh, chest up, buck up or whatever. And that's just what I was raised on, right? And I'm sure there was a ton of black men who were raised the exact same way. So anyway, I say all that to say, like, make sure you really get to know somebody. Make sure you really truly understand how that person was raised, how they receive love, how they give love, how their family was loved, how that person's mom was loved, or how that person's father was loved. Like it's so important because that'll give you a reference point for what it is that you do, right? So if you do a certain type of thing, you're like, he's just like his mom, or he's just like his dad, or the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? That is so cliche, but it's real. It's real because you act in the way that you was brought up. You act the way that your environment taught you how to act. So it's very, 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 very important. So Reverend Christina, like I said, this status is on my Facebook right now. So one of my really, really, really close friends, Reverend Christina Dennis, she talked about communication. Now we're talking about some of the most difficult things that people have to deal with, in hard times in their relationship. So communication. Now we all know communication is a huge thing, but it's a huge thing for everybody because people just don't know how to give and receive effective communication, right? So Reverend Dennis, she said, had to learn it's not comforting to tell your spouse, I will punch you in the throat or I will cut you. I love her to death. She's so raw. We were good once we learned the best way to communicate with each other. She also said that process took 3 years. So that process to really learn how to communicate with her significant other effectively took 1, 2, 3. It took 3 years, y'all. 3 years for her to really understand how to effectively communicate with her spouse. Why? Why did it take so long for her to really figure out how to effectively communicate with her spouse? I personally think trial and error. Like I said before, earlier in the live, you're literally bringing together two completely different entities, right? You're bringing together two completely different entities. And like I said, if you guys have any comments, questions for me, whatever, this is my first time doing this. I want to keep doing this because I want people to really come to this. I want this to be a safe space for healing and understanding, right? Especially for people of color, black men, black women. I want you guys to be in the space. This ain't a red table talk. I ain't Jada Pinkett. I'm out. So anyway, this is what I want to talk about. So anyway, right? Communication. And when I talk about communication, like we could just talk to one another, but I think a lot of the times because we don't know how to effectively communicate, we literally just we just listen enough to have a response. And I know I'm pretty sure people have heard that before, that we just listen enough to have a response. But when you're it actually takes time to be in a space where you are truly listening to your partner, right? you're receiving what your partner says, and then you make an action to change it. But not only do you make an action to change it, you make that effective communication leads to you changing the action, and you changing that particular action on a consistent basis. So like it's like, to me, in my mind, I think it's like layers to communication. So effective communication to me is being in a space to receive and listen to what it is that the other person is saying, making the action to change it, to change the whatever was communicated about, and then also consistently acting on that action that you need to change. So it's so many layers to communication, and it takes time to grow with one another, to really communicate with one another. Like it takes time for all of that shit. Like when you talk about relationships and really working through some tough times, it takes time to work through some tough times. It really takes time to understand what that other person could be thinking, what that other person could be going through. Like I could have been having a terrible day, and by the time I got home, I don't know, I might have left the toilet seat up, and you don't like that shit. And then boom, from there, it just leads to a whole array of other issues, right? So communication is just layers. And like I said, if anybody got any questions, comments, I'm going to post this up on my YouTube. Once I get done, I'm going to upload this on my YouTube, so you can follow me at Malcolm Locks, and you can also cash at Malcolm Coley. Don't forget that. But like I said, communication is so many layers, and it really takes time to grow and be able to process someone else's feelings. Like I don't really truly know. I don't think that I really truly know how to process somebody else's feelings. I mean, I've grown to a place where I have a greater perspective for somebody else's feelings, but in order to really process somebody's feelings and to really put yourself in a position where the shoe's on the other foot, and really trying to take the time to just understand, like it takes time for you to really grow as a human being in order to be in that space. Like it really just takes time. Like everybody thinks like relationships are like quick, fast, overnight type things. Like, nah, you can't microwave none of this shit. Like you just cannot microwave none of this. And me being in the space that I'm in right now, you know, being a single black man and really trying to have these conversations, it's really put me in a space to force myself to grow, because I really want to take the time to understand other people's perspectives. Because as I said before, prior to, I used to say the wrong things in the wrong timing, and my level of understanding was poop. So, you know, now that my level of understanding has grown so much, I can communicate a lot better. I'm a lot more calm when I communicate as well. So also in a lot of communications, the tone in which you're communicating. Like I can't sit here and be like, oh, you should have put the toilet seat down. Like, nah, it's like, if you have a moment, or could you please put the toilet seat down? And even then, being calm, cool, calm, and collected, that could still lead to some stuff, but it might not be as bad as if you was yelling, right? So also your tone in communication means a whole lot, because everybody everywhere receives things a certain type of way, right? Especially black women, because, you know, black women tend to act on emotion. It is what it is. No, I love my black women, but it is what it is. Black women tend to, but just women, period. I don't want to stereotype, because y'all know I love my black queens. I don't just want to stereotype nobody, but matter of fact, you know what? Let me take that a step back. People in general tend to act on emotion. People tend to act on emotion. So your tone in which you deliver the thing that you're communicating can really change the dynamic of a conversation. Ooh, that was a good one. That was a good one, y'all. That was a good one. So yeah, your tone in communication can really change the dynamic in the conversation. Man, that was a heavy one. So anyway, that takes time, yo. That takes time. You can't microwave that process when it comes to really understanding your partner and how that person receives whatever it is that they're receiving. So it takes time to really learn that. So let's see. I'm pulling up all this stuff from this status because this is what I wanted to do. So let's say forgiveness. One person on my status talked about forgiveness. Now, this is something that I struggle with because especially we live in this time where racism is real. Racism is, yeah, it's just a real thing. So it's hard for me to forgive certain things. But, you know, when you're in a relationship and trying to get over some real difficult things, I think that in order for you to progress forward, you have to forgive the person because you need that. You need that in order to grow. You need that in order to let go. You need to forgive, not forget. You don't forget, right? But you need to forgive in order to let certain things grow so that you could progress forward as a person, right? And I think that concept is a little difficult at times because it's difficult, y'all. Like, forgiving somebody who did you dirty or forgiving somebody who did you wrong, whether it was unintentionally or intentionally, is difficult because that could have really hurt your feelings. It could have put you in an emotional state that you weren't in before, that now that you're in, it could have led to doubts in your mind. Like, it could have just led to so many different things. But if you don't put yourself in a position, don't forget, but if you don't put yourself in a position to forgive, you won't progress forward as a person. And sometimes with me, I have a hard time forgiving. Why? Because that's something that I need to work on. That's something that I need to get to a point where I gotta work on some things too. Cause you know, I have a hard time. And sometimes, you know, as we all can be, we could all be petty. And you know, we could all be petty, right? So put yourself in a space to forgive because it's just a good thing. So my friend Shanae, she put cultural differences, right? Communication and emotional accountability. That's actually heavy. Cultural differences cultural difference. I remember I was dating one person and we had different religious beliefs. And at the end of the day, that actually caused us to stop talking to one another because her religious beliefs were different than mine at the time. And we stopped dealing with one another because we couldn't find that line where, you know, we could compromise with one another. But even now, I think that if I was talking to somebody who had a religious difference or a cultural difference, I think the communication is everything, right? The communication is everything where if you really understand how that person was brought up and you really put yourself in a space where you just talk this shit out. Like, talking shit out can go so far in terms of just really getting to know somebody and really just understanding somebody's differences and beliefs and really seeing how much they align with yours, right? Yeah, that's it. And that's all about that one. Emotional accountability. That's a heavy one. I think I'm gonna come back to emotional accountability because that's a heavy one. Let's see here. So my friend Tina, she said realizing it was an abusive relationship and building strength to leave everything behind. Difficult. That's really, really difficult right there. Really, really difficult right now because building the strength to leave everything behind, especially once you put the time in to build a relationship, I mean, you can't get that time back. At the end of the day, you know, what's a lesson learned? And, you know, abuse isn't just a physical thing. Like, I don't want anybody to get physically abused, right? I don't want anybody to get verbally abused. But also, like, that verbal and physical abuse also leads to that emotional trauma that it takes a long time for people to heal from. And I want if you are in a relationship where you feel as though that you're being verbally abused and physically abused, and this also goes back to really learning and understanding how a person was brought up, because that might be what they see as love. As twisted as it may sound, right? People might see abuse as a form of love. I could be right, I could be wrong, but this is just things that I've seen. This is my perspective. People could take physical and emotional abuse and see that as some type of love and always run towards it, as opposed to, as she said, building the strength to leave it, right? So, and it's hard. none of this stuff that I'm talking about, or none of this stuff that I'm engaging in with these conversations. And the next coming weeks, I'm going to have people on this live with me, because it's just something. This is just something that I wanted to do. I'm gonna have other people on this live with me, but man, building up the strength to leave somebody after you have so much time invested, and it's not like just because somebody emotionally or physically abused you, it's not like you don't, in a weird way, still don't love that person, right? Like, people still love even though they get hurt. It is what it is. But emoji, people still love through that, and it's just difficult to build up that strength in order to leave everything behind that you've built with a person. Because sometimes it takes 5 years, 10 years, 15 years to build all that up, whether it be finances, emotions, kids, houses, jobs, and then just to be like, yo, I can't take this anymore. I don't want to be with you anymore. I'm out. And not only that, man, you just really gotta be in that space to do that. Like, if you're not in that space to do that, you're not going to do that. You're always going to keep going back. Like Tyrese, every time I try to leave, something keeps pulling me back. One of those type of things. So, yeah, this is what it's going. Yo, listen, y'all, it's going to get better. Moving forward for lessons they never teach you. Like I said, I want you guys to follow me on YouTube. Wow, I've been talking for 46 minutes. Oh, well, I could talk a lot, but I've been talking for 46 minutes. So please, y'all, subscribe to my YouTube, Malcolm Locks. I'm gonna post this video on my YouTube. My topics and lessons they never teach you is gonna get a lot more in depth. I'm gonna have people on here. I'm gonna have couples. We're gonna share stories. I'm gonna be doing interviews. I want this to be a dope thing that I do, and people are already knowing, the blue room. I do this straight in my room. I got a light. I do it straight in my room. So this is just a conversation that I want to have between us, specifically black men and black women, because I think that if we can really understand one another and really start to work hard for one another and really start to communicate and work together with one another, our relationships will help build our communities, and our communities could get a lot stronger, especially in this time of uncertainty. I think that we really, really, really need to communicate a lot more with one another, and really, really, really need to understand what it is that we need to do in order to get stronger as a people, to build our bonds a lot more stronger as a people. So this is just one of the things that we could do to build stronger bonds as a person. So whether you do or don't agree with anything that I'm saying, please give me feedback. Next week, please tune back in. We'll be back here at 7 o'clock, and I'm going to have people on with me. So go to my YouTube, Malcolm Locks, Instagram, Malcolm Locks, TikTok, Malcolm Locks, Twitter, Malcolm Locks, Snapchat, Malcolm Locks, Facebook, Malcolm Locks, MalcolmColey.com. Please go subscribe to my website. I'm going to put this up on my website as well. So, yeah, appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hit that like button here on Facebook. Go ahead and subscribe to me on YouTube as well. Lessons they never teach you. Yeah, that's it for right now.